again, I'm not going to pretend to know what Dustin Byfuglien's going through his head right now. What's your takeaway, Spec? Do you think there'd be a big marketplace, and do you expect to see his return?
I think there's a big marketplace. I don't expect him to return.
Hey everybody, welcome into our very first episode of Hockey Central at Home. I'm David Amber. Great to have you along here on sportsnet.ca as well as Sportsnet YouTube channels. Hope you're enjoying yourselves during this very specific lockdown period we are suffering through throughout this global pandemic. But we're trying to bring all the best insiders, analysts, players, GMs to you to discuss the ongoing NHL news. And so for our very first episode, we're pleased to welcome in Chris Johnston, our insider for Hockey Night in Canada and Sportsnet NHL coverage, and Mark Spector from Valquentin, Alberta, his home away from home outside of Edmonton. He's our Sportsnet.ca senior columnist. How you guys doing right now?
I'm doing as well as can be, David. Nice to see you.
Yeah, great to be here. It's nice to see some familiar faces here. I'm getting sick of looking at the Golden Retriever every day.
What's in the background? What jersey is that, Spec?
That's my outdoor jersey. I'm out at a little lake place just outside Edmonton. We play a little outdoor hockey out here in the winter, and that is my California Golden Seals jersey, which I like to wear on the outdoor rink. It's, you know what? You got to be an old guy to recognize that logo, Dave.
I remember that as a young boy, the California Golden Seals. I remember they weren't very good, kind of like the Cleveland Barons. They weren't very good, but we got a hockey theme there, and we feel a little bit of the hockey vibe. Listen, there's not a ton of news on a day-to-day basis breaking from the National Hockey League while they're on this pause. However, on Friday, there was some significant news. We'll call it big news, big Byfuglien news. Dustin Byfuglien and the Winnipeg Jets finally mutually deciding to terminate the final year and the $7.6 million cap hit on his contract. So walk us through this, gentlemen. Start with you, CJ. What can you tell us about the situation with Dustin Byfuglien and the fact that officially he's no longer a member of the Winnipeg Jets?
Well, I think probably the most interesting part of this is that in the end, Dustin Byfuglien is choosing to walk away from $14 million, which was what he was owed for this season and the next one on this contract. There's no more grievance. There's no issues over that money. Basically, he's stepping away. And obviously, even for the amount of money he would have earned during his career, I think it's hard for most of us to understand how you get to that point. And I thought it was interesting, you know, with this news being announced, Kevin Cheveldayoff, the Jets GM, went on a conference call and basically went day by day, you know, what Winnipeg knew and when throughout this process. It started the day before camp when Byfuglien told him he had lost sort of the desire to want to continue his NHL career. It ultimately ended up with him getting some surgery and thinking he wanted to come back, doing some rehab work, and then stepping away from that. And so Dustin Byfuglien's always danced to the beat of his own drum, and he's walking away from a lot of money and making this decision. Spec,
what's your takeaway?
Well, I mean, Chris describes the history of it exceptionally well. The most interesting thing for me now is he retired? Is this it? Is he going to play again? There's a lot of fan bases that are looking at that player and saying, man, you know, sure could stand him on a one-year deal. That to me is the interesting thing. Like, it's a very rare occurrence to see a guy walk away from that money. It's a very odd situation to see a contract terminated the way this one was. Nothing about Dustin Byfuglien's career has been mainstream. Like Chris said, you know, saying that he walks the beat of his own drummer, that's a nice way of putting it. He's a different cat, and he handles his affairs differently than everybody does. So is this it? Is he done? Is he coming back? Should teams talk about signing him? Should fan bases get excited? I don't have a clue what the next step is for Dustin Byfuglien.
All right, well, let me add to that. Well, first of all, let's be clear. He cannot come back this season. If the season is unpaused and resumes, he can't be signed on by any team. But looking ahead to next year, let me ask you guys, what do you think the marketplace is for a 35-year-old coming off an injury who hasn't played in over a year? You know, and I understand his pedigree, I understand his background, but is there a legitimate marketplace for Dustin Byfuglien moving forward, in your opinion?
I think it'd be massive, honestly. I mean, if he wants to play, I think you got 20 teams at least in on that kind of conversation. I mean, if you look at all the numbers that he produced, I mean, he put up tons of points in Winnipeg. His underlying numbers in that last season that he played there, and he played through some injury troubles in his final full year, were tremendous. And he's always been someone that defied his body, right? I mean, he was a very big man who could still play forward, who could play defense, who could do it any way you wanted to do it. And I do think, certainly there would be a line of teams that would sign him if he's willing to do that.
By the way, speaking about his body, I remember once I said to him, Buff, how much do you weigh? And he turned to me and it was straight pan. He just said, none of your business. And I said, okay. But I mean, he could be clocking in close to $3 bills at this point. We're not quite sure exactly. It's worth noting on Hockey Central on Friday, a former teammate, they won a Stanley Cup together in Chicago in 2010. Chris Versteeg told Jeff Merrick and the guys, I can't see any way that Dustin Byfuglien will be playing again. His exact words, I would be shocked if he plays again. So there's that. But again, I'm not going to pretend to know what Dustin Byfuglien's going through his head right now. What's your takeaway, Spec? Do you think there'd be a big marketplace, and do you expect to see his return?
I think there's a big marketplace. I don't expect him to return. And if I was the National Hockey League GM, I would allow others to try and fall over themselves and drive the price up. I don't trust any player who is 35 coming off of a significant injury that when it came time to rehab that ankle, when it came time to really get to work on it, he decided, I don't feel like it. Yes, he has defied in a league where everybody is in fabulous shape every month of every year now. Dustin Byfuglien has skated at 260, 270, 250, whatever he was that week, and avoided, generally speaking, I'm knocking wood here, generally avoided injury and been a good player. At 35, in my opinion, that player falls off the cliff. I don't want to invest 2 years worth of cap space in a 35-year-old guy that's never been keen on the gym, coming off a big injury and eating up a big chunk of my cap. Now let somebody else do it, boys.
And it is worth noting, it was going to be a $7.6 million hit. And again, the salary cap as it stands, the ceiling, $81.5 million. And we know that's going to take a dramatic turn based on the lost revenue we're expecting so far with this season paused as it is right now. Speaking of the season being paused, guys, the big storyline all NHL fans really want to know is when and if the NHL could return this season. Donald Trump, the president, did call together all the sports commissioners and had a conference call earlier this week, and he seems incredibly motivated for whatever reasons, of course, to get pro sports back with or without fans in the stadiums. That being said, where do you guys see this going? How do you see this playing out? And I know, Chris, we'll start with you because you had a little bit of breaking news as well on Friday. Chris Sununu, the governor of New Hampshire, apparently in discussions with Gary Bettman. Fill in the details there, Chris.
Yeah, and an illustration of how weird of a place Twitter can be. I tweeted on Friday morning about the interest of New Hampshire in holding NHL games, specifically in Manchester there, and the governor gave the eye emoji on top of that tweet. So, it's confirming, of course, what's going on. I mean, look, that's one of a few cities. Elliot Friedman talked a week or two ago about North Dakota as a potential spot. I think the league's looked at. I think Buffalo has been a city that the league has had some interest in. I mean, ultimately, I think if the NHL comes back, we know a few things. There's going to be no fans in the building, for what's left of or what can be played of a 2019-20 season and playoffs. There's probably multiple locations just from a logistical standpoint where you're going to have, hotel accommodations and basically create this bubble that the teams would live in and then play in terms of the stadium. And I guess, Manchester, New Hampshire is one of those places. As to how likely it is, I'm personally a little bit cynical about this, skeptical about it, just because it feels like we're, if you look at what the medical experts are saying, we're still in the throes of this thing. I mean, we're seeing the caseloads grow in a lot of places still at this stage across North America. I don't know if we're going to get to the point that it makes sense to do this, but clearly the league has looked into its options for how it might do it. And they have a president down there in the U.S. that seems pretty motivated to getting pro sports going back up and running as soon as possible.
Spec?
It's two conversations for me, guys. Look, as a hockey fan, would I turn on some hockey this summer and watch a game? Dying for sports, right? Dying for sports. I just watched the Masters, the last 10 different Masters last week. I've been watching our games on Saturday nights, the old throwback games. I'm a sports guy. I'm looking for sports. I get it. So if you could play safely, go out and play. Here's what I'm worried about. I hope that in their need and their wishes to get this season completed, that Bill Daley remembers, the deputy commissioner, what he promised or what he said when this whole thing started. And that was they don't want to impinge on the integrity of next season to try to get this season in. Mm-hmm. I don't want this COVID-19 to wreck 2 seasons here. So if we cut this one off and can have a normal 2020, 2021 season, if that's possible, I'm in on that all the way. If we're going to play until November, take a 2-week break, start the next season, play it into July, all of that stuff, everyone's going to be tired, and basically ruin the integrity of 2 seasons, I'm not in for that.
I've got to say, I'm already worried about next season, probably even more than this one, because I think that there's an argument to be made about playing what you can of this playoffs with no fans. I could see players signing off on the chance to finish off this year, especially on the teams that have a chance to win a Stanley Cup. But starting next season in a scenario where there's no fans in the building, I don't know if that makes any sense. And you know, a lot of people much smarter than me that I've seen talk about this issue, that being doctors, epidemiologists, scientists, have said that until there's a vaccine, we can't really have fans again at sports events. So as strange as it might sound, I think it's probably easier to finish the 1920 season than it is going to be to start up the 2021 season.
And that's a valid point.
So let add, David, there was a particular baseball player who said, look, I'm not in for starting a season where we're going to have to be quarantined the entire season in some hotel room away from home and my family. The guy's wife is pregnant, right? So your best player, you know, has a situation at home where he wants to go visit his wife or watch a baby be born or attend something. Mm-hmm. Now you're in the middle of a season, and do you lose him for 2 weeks because now he's gone home to his family for a normal visit? Like, how are we going to do this?
These are fair questions. A ton of logistics need to be worked out. Let's not forget there's a number of NHL players across the Atlantic in Sweden, Finland, Czech Republic, Russia that first of all need to get back to North American soil to get things going. So yes, a ton of logistics. Really quickly though, if we are, you know, going to try and formulate some type of system that would work to keep the integrity, not compromise the players' safety, and not compromise the integrity of the Stanley Cup, the most cherished trophy there is out there, what format would you see? Because to me, I think you need to expand the playoff format here. You can't just say to those teams on the bubble, well, hey, you played 71 games. Sorry, you missed the playoffs by a point. You know, fans in Winnipeg, Vancouver, even Montreal, because they're in that discussion too if you're going to branch out to a 2014 format. Really quickly, guys, what kind of format would you ideally like to see?
Chris, I'll start with that. I think you're right, David. There's 2 things for me. On one hand, if you say to the Vancouver Canucks, we're going on points percentage, we're going to extrapolate through the season on points percentage, congratulations, you're in the playoffs. Guess what? James Neal in Edmonton, who needs 1 more goal for that 3rd round pick to go to Calgary. Well, the Calgary Flames are going to say, hey, we're extrapolating for Vancouver. How about extrapolating for us and give us a 3rd round pick? So you got to be careful how you do this thing. I'm going to say this. Everyone needs to not feel ripped off. Let's have a system where instead of 8 teams getting in, you let in the 12 that were close, and you make up a first round that's best of 5, whatever you do, a play-in. I'm good with that. It's a special year. Let's have special playoffs.
I'm with you, and I actually believe that this will extend into the future, that we're going to see an expanded playoffs beyond this season, whatever is left of it. And so I think going to 32 teams with Seattle coming, it makes sense probably to have a 20-team playoff anyway. With some wild cards at the bottom, you know, say a 7 versus 10, 8 versus 9 playoff format kind of system. And so to me, this can be the start of bridging to the next year while also being fair to all those teams that were right there in the playoff hunt on March 11th when the last games are played.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you, Chris, only because I like the integrity. An 82-game season, it has to be meaningful. I think with a 32nd team in Seattle joining the NHL, the perfect delineation of 50% are in, 50% are out seems reasonable. Once you have 60, 65, 70% of teams making the playoffs, why go through an 82-game schedule? That's just me. Maybe fans would feel differently. But I hope in this one unique situation, because we're not going to be able to play an 82-game schedule, let's allow a greater number of teams that, you know, viable shot, as Spec said, to win the Stanley Cup this year, and add an extra round of drama for our fans who've been, you know, have this insatiable appetite for hockey that just hasn't been quenched now in 6-7 weeks. So
Well,
listen,
back in the days of the California Golden Seals, it was 16-21 or whatever that we're getting in.
I grew up on 16-21 teams making it, and I was too young to sort of go, why am I watching these regular season games? Might have more of a critical eye now, though. Guys, this has been a lot of fun. Hockey Central at Home, we're going to be bringing this to you on sportsnet.ca and as well on our Sportsnet YouTube channels for all the latest information. We have the insiders, the GMs, we'll have coaches, players, as well as analysts coming your way. So keep it locked here. Chris, Speck, I hope you enjoyed the ride. Stay safe, guys.
Yeah, be well.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next time.